Hello, hello. Today we are doing Proverbs chapter 16. Proverbs 16 today. We have been doing one chapter in the book of Proverbs each and every day, and we want you to go and follow along reading book one chapter in the book of Proverbs each and every day. There are 31 chapters, 31 days in the month of January. And so we definitely want you to follow along with us as we go forth in our daily devotion. Let's get right into the word today. In Proverbs chapter 16, this is such an amazing chapter as the ones before. But here it's talking about God's sovereign control, the power of wisdom, and the path of righteous leadership. Righteous leadership. In 16, it emphasizes that while humans make plans, God ultimately governs outcomes. It teaches humility, integrity, self control, and wisdom, especially when we're talking about leadership, speech, and daily conduct. This chapter repeatedly contrasts human intention with divine authority, reminding us continually that a successful life aligns with God's will, not only human effort. It has to align with God's will, not simply by human effort. And so in verses 1 through 4 and 9, it talks about God directing the outcomes of our plans. I know you've all heard the little joke, we make plans and God laughs. Well, this is where that comes from, because God ultimately will direct the outcome of our plans, especially as we give it to Him to lead and to guide. We as humans, we are free to plan, to strategize, to set goals, but the Lord determines the final outcome. Even our words and steps are under His authority. This calls for humility and dependence on God rather than self-reliance. Planning is wise. Don't get it twisted. Planning is so wise, but submission to God, His authority, and His ultimate outcome for your life, it's so essential, because God weighs motives, not just actions. And everything ultimately serves God's purposes, even things we don't fully understand. Don't you know we were created for His good pleasure and not necessarily our own? And so everything ultimately is designed that we do as children of God is to serve His purposes, right? Even when we don't really get it. We must commit our work to the Lord, and our plans will be established. Remember, success comes and success flows from surrender, not from control. In verses 2 and 5, it talks about God examining the heart and the motives. People often justify their actions, but God evaluates the heart. Pride is especially condemned because it resists correction and places itself above God, right? Because when you think you can do it all on your own and think God is not a factor, then there's a whole problem right there. External behavior may look right, but God sees intentions. Pride leads to downfall, and humility invites God's grace and His favor into your life, into your situation, into your plans. Pure motives matter more than polished appearance when we're talking about righteousness. In verse 6 through 8, righteousness and mercy preserves life. It stands, it's long lasting. Faithfulness, integrity, and reverence for God brings protection, it brings peace. Living rightly is more valuable than gaining wealth through unjust means. God honors moral integrity, He honors peace. And guess what? Peace with God in and of itself always results in peace with others. Obedience produces security that money can never buy. And character itself is so much greater than profit. How many rich men have bad character? Rich women have bad character. Character is much greater than a profit. In verse 7, it speaks about God's favor and how God's favor will bring true peace in your life. When a person lives in such a way that pleases the Lord, guess what happens? God can bring peace even in difficult relationships, including relationships with your enemies. God can change the hearts and situations. Obedience will always invite divine intervention. Peace, it is a fruit of alignment with God. And God's approval matters more than people's opinions. People are going to say what they want to say anyway. But guess what? The only person that matters, no matter what you find yourself going through or in or even doing, is God's approval. If God approves of it, it really doesn't matter what other people have to say, because other people don't have a heaven or a hell to put you in anyway. So be sure that you have been approved by God. Verses 16 through 19 talk about wisdom and how it's more valuable than riches. We've been seeing these the last couple of chapters, the last few chapters. We've been seeing how much wisdom is far more precious and far more valuable than riches, than gold, than jewels, right? Wisdom and understanding are described as a priceless treasure. And so we must gain wisdom if we truly want a priceless treasure. Humility is repeatedly linked to wisdom, while pride will always lead to destruction. Wisdom protects and guides, pride isolates and destroys. Humility humility positions us to learn and to grow. But pride goes before destruction. We've been hearing that over and over and over again. True wealth is found in godly wisdom and the power of our words. Woo! Having self-control over the power of our words is so vital. It talks about that in verses 21 through 24, verses 27 through 30. Our speech reflects the heart, and it has the power to heal or to destroy. Wise words are pleasant, persuasive, and life-giving. Think about that. And we talked about even the wise words of a woman, right? That how she builds her house with the words that she speaks, and she can tear down her house with the very words that she speaks. And so self-control, it matters. It is so important. Self-control is so important, especially over anger. Because anger is presented as greater than physical strength. Words can bring healing or harm. Self-control shows true strength. Gentle speech fosters understanding. When we mastery over oneself is greater than conquering others. Think about it. We used to hear the song, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." But honestly, bones heal. But words cut so deep and sometimes takes a lifetime to heal. If you have Jesus Christ, he can heal you and deliver you and set you free from any word curses, anything that's been put upon you. But please, as Christians, we ought to be able to control our mouth, control our tongue, and be disciplined with what it is that we say. Verses 10 through 15 talks about God establishing authority and leadership. These verses here focus on leadership, especially kings and those in authority. So God desires us as leaders to rule with justice, wisdom, and righteousness. Leadership is a divine responsibility. Righteous leaders bring stability. Just leaders reflect God's character. Godly leadership blesses both the leader and the people. And in verse 33, it talks about God being sovereign, not just sovereign, but sovereign over every detail. This is how the chapter concludes, by affirming that even what appears random is under God's control. That's The lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. Nothing in life is accidental when placed in God's hands. Proverbs 16 teaches us that a wise life is a surrendered life. Planning, leadership, speech, and success must all be submitted to God. True wisdom flows from humility, integrity, and trust in the Lord's sovereignty. Truth to remember is that we plan, but God directs. We choose, but God governs. We succeed when we surrender. Well, we hope that you have been absolutely blessed today by Proverbs chapter 16 and our Proverbs daily devotional. We encourage you to continue to read the Word of God. As you read it each and every day, it becomes a habit. Proverbs is such a great source of wisdom to start off the new year. And so we want you to know that we hope you are totally being blessed by the words that we have been sharing with you all thus far. We want you to know that we love you. And guess what? There's nothing you can do about it.